Hi everyone, welcome to the Seller Finance and Creative Deals podcast. I'm Dan Deppin, and today I'm joined by investor Dave Friedman. Dave, how you doing?
Great, Dan. Thanks so much.
No, thanks for coming on. Interested from learning from you about, how you go about creative deals and find deals and get things done. But maybe first you just give us like a little bit of background on yourself and how you got into this.
Yeah, absolutely. I started trading notes about 4 years ago, and I started getting into real estate investing seriously about 4 years ago. Before it was, if I happen to see an opportunity, then I would jump on it, and decided to make it more of another stream of income. So started investing, and with the idea of with low interest rates, getting a lot of rentals. So ended up with about 40 doors within single family residential within maybe 3 years or so. And then with the high rate environment, that slowed down quite a bit. So we started flipping more of them, and not holding as many rentals. And so we're still doing probably about close to 40 a year.
Oh
And
wow, so you said you did 4-0 in 3 years?
yeah, we kept about 40 rentals in 3 years.
Uh-huh.
And and probably doing about 40 deals total a year,
Mm-hmm.
every year. And so we'd keep some as rentals and we would flip others. And we've gotten to the point with the high interest rate environment and so on, we're flipping more than we're keeping. We're not keeping very many right now, maybe a few a year that make a lot of sense.
Uh-huh.
And somebody had introduced me, a guy that coaches me introduced me to the idea of seller financing. And so when we run our numbers with a real estate investment, we generally look at, after we have a property under contract, just try to figure out what the best disposition strategy is. And for a while, we were putting money into these properties, putting them on the market and flipping them. And
Mm-hmm.
at some point, realized that we're making just as much without putting any money into them. And we're just putting them under contract, closing, and then putting them immediately back on the market.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're doing that with a significant number of them, opposed to putting money into them and fixing them up. And I think our average budget, when we're not doing any kind of renovations, our average budget is maybe $2,000 to $3,000. On the high
Uh-huh.
end, it's because we're cleaning it out, and maybe doing something major. But generally, we're not doing anything cosmetic or major, and we're just cleaning the home out and putting it right back on the market. And then somebody introduced me to seller financing as another disposition strategy. And because we're not closing on so many rentals anymore, and looking at the seller note strategy, it's great because it's achieves the same passive income that we were wanting to create, through rentals, but we're able to do it through seller financing. And so when we look at our disposition strategy, we, run seller financing through as an option. And again, whether we fix it up or not fix it up, we just run the numbers on both outcomes with seller
Mm-hmm.
financing as an option. And if the numbers make sense to do that, when we put the market home back on the market, we list it like we generally would, but we have a slightly different marketing strategy where we do some additional marketing on a lot of, more or less like Facebook marketing and Craigslist and so on, promoting the seller financing option, and we get a lot of leads that way.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we're, if we can get about a 15% or more cash on cash return by generating a seller note with our flip, then we'll really try to push into that. And sometimes we find a great buyer, with that's looking for seller financing. Sometimes we find a great buyer that just wants to buy it and is not interested in the seller financing. And so
Mm-hmm.
we don't get it every time, but in the ones that we prefer to get it on, we push hard and hopefully wait for that buyer to make that happen.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. So first off, like going from 0 to doing like 40 in 3 years or 4 years is pretty awesome. Like I know a lot of investors like they spend 5 years just like collecting information before they
Yeah.
do one. So that's a pretty quick ramp up. So how do you go about like finding the properties that are suitable?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's mostly marketing. We don't really. I don't know that we have found an on-market property that's already listed that'll work for us. We don't
Mm-hmm.
focus on that a ton, but we find most of our deals off market. and it's generally by direct mail has been probably 80% of where the lead flow and deal flow comes from.
Uh-huh.
And I'd say the other 20% is a mixed bag of like sometimes a realtor will bring us a deal. Sometimes it'll be a referral from somebody that we've already bought a home from. They call us
Mm-hmm.
back and say, hey, I have another property, or I have a friend that needs to sell and also would want a cash offer. And and sometimes we get, sometimes we'll buy leads. We have a little bit of lead flow through some lead providers, but that's not really where we rely on for lead flow. It's mostly direct
But you're
mail.
basically making cash offers
It's all, yeah, it's
to
all
folks. Yeah.
cash offer marketing, going out
Mm-hmm.
and meeting with homeowners and making cash offers, and that's how we're getting our deals.
Yeah, that's super cool. So, and then are you doing all this like in your backyard? You're in South Carolina?
Yeah, I'm in Charleston, South Carolina, and so the three counties in this area that are, consider our backyard would be like Berkeley, Dorchester, Charleston County. And that was the focus for a long time. And so
Mm-hmm.
we're starting to branch out into other parts of South Carolina just to try to generate more lead flow.
Yeah. Now, then when you're disposing of them, like you mentioned, like a lot of these you're returning into to rentals, like how did the increase in interest rates drive you to do more seller finance? Were you basically carrying loans on the rental portfolios and that's what it was? Or
Yeah, the higher payments. And a couple other things happened too in our market. Home values went up quite a bit,
uh-huh.
and rent values didn't increase at the same rate.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was based on that itself, it got harder and harder to get rental deals to work. And then when you
Mm-hmm.
layer on the fact that the cost of financing went up because of interest rates, compounded the issue of cash flow on a home, and whether a home would actually cash flow or not, or we're looking for a minimum of like a 10% cash on cash return with a rental,
Uh-huh.
and trying to get some kind of gap between our interest rate and our cap rate
Mm-hmm.
and our loan constant, difference between the really it's the interest rate and the loan constant is we're looking for a gap, spread in there. And so it just got more and more challenging to find deals that would have a good enough spread to make it worth it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you ever wrap loans or take on like subject to deals or are they all cash
Um,
purchases?
we sometimes we will. I'm not interested in really holding. I know there's people that'll, do a wrap and then, sell it on seller terms, and do
Yeah,
funky
I asked
stuff
because
like
I'm
that.
going down that rabbit hole myself. I haven't
Yeah.
done it personally, but I have a lot of clients who are doing it. So I've been, yeah, trying to dive into the weeds on that because I find a lot of other stuff like strategies are good, but just the devil's in the details. So,
Yeah, so I don't know what happens if you all right, so I'll do subject to deals on a flip,
mm-hmm.
because they're really I'll negotiate seller financing terms that are far better than what I could get if I got a loan on it.
Yeah.
And um but I'll do it on a flip. I don't think I'm interested in doing something where I want to keep it long term, do like a sub two and then keep it as a rental, because if I end up, let's say the 40 deals that I have were all sub two and I'm renting
Mm-hmm.
them out, or I sell them on owner terms or something like that, do like land contract or contract for deed or something like that, then what happens if all these banks go and call these notes due because they saw the deed transfer?
Yeah.
And now you have to come up with the capital to pay it off, and and there's a lot of people that do it. And I think for the most part, historically they're not calling these things due. And
Mm-hmm.
if they do, that's just one of the risks that you have to consider and whether you want to deal with that or not. But I'm for a short-term hold strategy, I'll do a seller note because I'll be in and out. I'm sorry, I'll do a sub two because I'll be in and out of that deal within like
Yeah, it's
two to
short-term,
four months.
so that window's closed. So even if the bank saw it and said we're calling it due, well, you're going to be out of it by then, anyways.
I'll be out of it by then. I could pay it off because I'm not sitting on 40 of them. so I'm
Hmm.
not all that concerned about if that does happen, I can fix that issue pretty quickly.
Yeah, I did hear of a case recently, and actually, I'm going to be doing a webinar with a guy. I don't know when that's going to come out relative to this. It should be like a week later, but he does transaction coordination, and he basically consults on do on sale stuff. So like we're gonna go down the rabbit hole on that. But he was mentioning he knew a guy who, I don't know if it was through like the contact information or whatever at the bank, but they happened to notice that he did one, and they did a search, and he had like five, and they called all five on
Oh
him.
yeah.
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 But apparently
So
there's ways to mitigate that too. So yeah, I'll have more
yeah,
info on that webinar down the road. But to me, it's kind of like a fascinating
I
topic.
would
But
say if you're getting deep into that, you probably also want to research the solutions if that ever happens, just so you know what to do.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, because if you didn't know what to do and you had 40 of them and they all got called, that could be ugly. That wouldn't be
Yeah,
great.
absolutely.
So,
And there's other ways to do where you're not doing a sub two, but maybe you're doing like owner, you buy a home on like a land contract or a contract for deed or something where the deed's not transferring,
hmm,
and so it wouldn't set the bank off. And then then they go and they resell it on other owner financing terms or something like that. And I just think, I like the sub two part a lot. I just
yeah,
don't think I really want to get into a situation where I have, because like you said, you're like, hey, Dave, that's great. You went from like 0 to 40 a year,
hmm,
and that's that's just how I like to play the game. Like if I'm going to go do something, I'm going to go and just take massive action immediately and try
hmm.
to ramp it up. And so I'm looking for a strategy that can scale. 40 years, not anywhere close to what, a lot of people do, but it's enough where you probably get yourself into a bad situation if you have too many notes called due on you.
Yeah, you don't want to put existential risk on the table when you do that. But to your
And
point,
here's
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, here's the other thing too is things become popular and then they get a lot of chatter on YouTube and social media, and then you get these gurus that are the experts, and they come out with like coaching programs and they're the influencer on the subject, and
Hmm.
I just think that's going to bring a lot of attention to something a lot quicker. And so the people that have built like empires on sub twos, and they have also been doing these things like under the radar. Not many people know what they are. It's probably not something that the banks are all that worried about. But all of a sudden, if it's like
Yeah, if
becomes
everybody's doing it, yeah.
if everyone's doing it, like the banks are probably going to react to it and say it's going to be on the radar. It's the same thing like in South Carolina, wholesaling's not allowed anymore. Well, you can't market a property you don't have equitable interest in. It's their effort to try to stop wholesaling.
Oh, I
And
heard
this is
something about that. Yeah, I'm not familiar with the details, but somebody was telling me about that the other day.
and it's kind of going like state to state. Like North Carolina's probably going to follow suit, and I think a lot of others. I imagine a lot of other states are going to follow suit in that. And I think I would assume that you know a lot of people did it for a long time, and it was again off the radar of the real estate commission and other lobbyists that think it interferes with traditional real estate, and so
Hmm.
people start making a big deal about it. A lot of people get into it. It's like the next cool thing to do, but I think that also means that it's probably going to get some heat around it. There's the attention's probably not a good thing because again, like in this situation with sub twos, the banks could become privy to how many people are doing this and do something about it.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely a risk. So when you're making offers on these properties or reaching out, like what are you looking for? Like what's a good candidate property for doing this? Is there like a dollar value, or you're looking for some level of distress, or yeah.
I mean, we just, we generate leads. People call us for all different reasons. And our goal is to set an appointment with them, meet them in person, and make offers on every single one that we meet with.
Hmm.
And so we're generally making offers like 65 to 75% of market value.
Mm-hmm.
If we can get it under contract at that price, like it'll generally work out well for us.
Uh-huh.
So it's very surface level. That's our strategy.
Gotcha. And then what do you do to find buyers for the ones where owner financing is going to make sense? I think you mentioned like Facebook and Craigslist.
Yeah, so I mean, we put everything on the MLS. In the
Mm-hmm.
very first part of the notes in the MLS, we put on there, owner will finance to a deserving buyer with large down payment.
Yep.
And our goal is to, you'll get a lot of unqualified people that you don't want to owner finance to. Well,
Yeah.
I'll take that back. With my strategy, there's a lot of people that I wouldn't want to owner finance to.
Mm-hmm.
But so, you put in their large down payment to a deserving buyer, and hopefully it cuts out all the people with no down payment or a small down payment,
Yeah.
and you don't have to deal with as much noise and people becoming interested in it. But we put that in the MLS. And then the first picture in the MLS is the home. The second picture is a graphic. It's a graphic photo and it says the same thing because not everyone's reading the notes in the MLS. They're just looking at pictures.
Yeah.
So, if their eyes never make it to the notes, you add the second photo and put in there again, seller financing to a deserving buyer with large down payment. It increases your chances that people are aware that that the owner is offering financing.
Uh-huh.
So, um, we also have a sign rider in the yard that says the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And outside of that, we put it like on a lot of Facebook marketplace groups where people are talking about real estate. It could be a group where people put their rentals in. It could be a group of people put like homes for sale. And just our marketing manager, she has it figured out. She has all the groups, that she posts them all to. So I'm not exactly sure what they all are.
There's a lot of them out there. A while back, I started trying to create an inventory of all the various real estate investing Facebook groups that kind of touch on this stuff, and it's enormous. You
It
know.
is. It is. And but we're also trying to find buyers that are end users that are going to live in the home. So we're
Yeah.
also putting it in a lot of groups where it's not a real estate investing group. It's just maybe a group where people look for rentals, because somebody that's looking
Mm-hmm.
for rentals because they don't have, maybe they can't get approved for one reason or another for a home, so they're looking for a rental. But then they see a home in there that they could buy, and they don't
Mm-hmm.
need traditional financing for it, right? So we've generated, by doing that, we've generated a lot more leads and increase the amount of homes that we can sell on owner financing.
Yeah, when I've done it, I mean, I've only sold maybe five or six on owner finance myself because I don't have the same model. Like I'll buy notes and I've done a lot of non-performing and sometimes end up with foreclosures that I'll sell. But yeah, I've never gone into those other Facebook groups for that. I've done like Facebook Marketplace and surprisingly like Craigslist is still a decent thing for this, it seems like. So
Yeah, Craigslist, same thing. It's like any of those places, it's good just to get the information out. Because your typical home buyer, most home buyers are going to go to Zillow or whatever it is, right?
mm-hmm.
And so, the MLS is going to capture all of that. But we want it to go to places that people know they can't buy, so they're not looking on Zillow. But
Yeah.
they need a place to live. And so we just thought about, well, where are these people going to if they need to find a rental? And so we're posting this on all the places within social that people go to look for rentals.
Yeah, that's a smart idea. I hadn't thought about it quite like that. 'Cause like I said, I haven't marketed a
Yeah.
ton of these personally, but yeah, you're looking at it from the perspective of, that potential buyer and where they might
Yeah.
show up. So,
Right. Yeah. And so that's, yeah, from a marketing strategy of how to find the people, that's essentially it, and we have your resources, when they say they're interested and they want to make an offer, we have all the questions to ask them. All
oh
the
yeah,
pro,
like you do
pro
the pre-screening and all of that good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, the pre-screening. And those were all really good conversations because sometimes we'll have two, three people that are interested. So you get on the phone with these folks and you get to know them a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people out there with like weird stories that don't add up when you start asking these questions, and it makes you feel a little uneasy.
Yeah.
And then there's always that person that's like somebody that you would love to live in this home and finance because there's nothing weird about it. Like the story lines up. And I'll say this too. I know there's a lot of people out there that'll buy a home, sell it on owner terms, owner financing,
Mm-hmm.
and they are okay with a very high default rate, so they'll take low down payments, they'll take very subpar borrowers,
Mm-hmm.
and their model is like, yeah, we foreclose on half the homes, and we get them back and then we do it again. And we get more down payments and our basis is lower and so on. And I've seen people, on stages that are, talking about how this is their model and their
Oh, I've seen
strategy.
people on stages say stuff that's crazy. Not necessarily like specifically that, but yeah, there's a lot of bad info out there.
There is like, and I'm like, I'm no expert in this field, and Dan, I've learned a lot from you.
Mm-hmm.
And but if they're doing this at any kind of scale and the judge notices that they're back again foreclosing on somebody else, and that I think that somebody could go after them for predatory lending practices.
Well,
And
yeah, I mean, there was one. I try to keep an eye on some of this stuff. I haven't been looking as closely lately, but was it towards the end of last year? I think it was Colony Ridge and the Texas Attorney General went after, and they were doing just that. They were collecting like 30% down payments, and it's Texas, so you can foreclose crazy fast. What is it, like 45 days, something like
yeah,
that? And they were doing. I mean, I think they did like 1,000 a day. Like, they did a lot. Like, so if you're doing like, so the thing is like all the compliance rules are designed like specifically to so that people don't do that.
yeah,
So when people are doing that at scale, that gets noticed. Yeah, and I read the write up on it, and they said like their default rate was like 50x the national average, which
yeah,
I mean, it was way too high what they had. That was maybe like a slightly unfair way to look at it because like bank default rates should be pretty low. Seller finance is kind of always going to be somewhat higher because if the borrowers were better, the banks would have lent to
yeah.
them. But yeah, 50x is pretty extreme. And yeah, if you start doing a bunch of those, it'll get noticed. I mean, the reality is if you go out and you do like five, 10, probably nobody cares, for that specifically. But I think the risk sometimes that people don't appreciate is one, like myself having done a lot of foreclosures, buying a lot of non-performing notes. Even in a fast foreclosure state, it's not always smooth sailing. Like the borrower can fight you, the borrower can file for bankruptcy the day before the sheriff's auction. I just had that like a month or two ago. I've had that, and I'm like, there's all kinds of stuff that can like drag it out. So even though like your baseline case might be like X number of months and it's going to cost this much for legal, you can get some outliers that can really take a long time. And then, the other risk is like the enforcement thing. If the borrower fights you and shows up and goes, "Hey, I didn't know what was going on with this. This person was a predatory lender. They just took a down payment. They're going to rinse and repeat." Then how that goes, a lot of that depends on like the judge you have and the mood they're in. So yeah, it's not quite the freebie like some people think. So I always recommend like staying away from that. There's easier ways to make money too. There's easier.
Yeah, and so that's where, going down to like the easy ways to make money. I think that, going that path is a way to make money, but then there's a lot of noise and hassle, and you have to, spend a considerable amount of time on foreclosing or kicking people, whatever it is, right?
Yeah, because it's not a fun
And
process or cheap or
no,
fast. Yeah.
and that's not the path I want to go down. And I know that I'm pretty clear on it. And I want to get good borrowers, good home buyers, and um have a note that is has a high value to it, and
Mm-hmm.
something for me that is like personally very quiet. And I want it to be like very I want to get a buyer in there, finance for them, and then have it be 100% passive and never have to hear about it again. Now, of course, there will be some issues that I have to deal with down the road, but my goal is to not have any issues and try to underwrite these things and choose the right borrower to where, again, the notes don't sell at a discount if I want to sell them.
Mm-hmm.
And that if I want to go pledge the notes as collateral to go get a credit facility, I can do that, and so for me, just what I'm looking to do, and I think all the strategies are great. It's just my personal choice. Is I'd rather flip the home and just sell it and not even generate a note at all if I can't find the right person.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense because the thing with notes is, right, you're one of the attractions to people is the potential passivity. And if you've
Yeah,
got like a good borrower and like a really high quality performing note, those things can be incredibly passive. Like literally like your loan servicer is kind of doing all the work and you're just collecting payments. But the non-performing ones are like the polar opposite of passive. Like it's a lot of time and work. And even though in theory your loan servicer is going to do certain things and your attorney's going to do this and your attorney's going to do that, the reality is you got to watch those things like a hawk and follow up relentlessly and push them along, or things will drag and things won't happen. Like if you get into a non-performing scenario, it's like hyperactive. So
yeah,
yeah, so unless you which
exactly.
you should never be looking for that if you're creating a note. Like I'm okay buying somebody else's non-performing note and going into that eyes wide open, and I'm buying at a big discount
Yeah,
when I'm taking that on. But if I'm creating a note, I don't want to ever land there unless, I mean, I guess if you do enough, it's going to happen. Yeah, it's a
sure.
numbers game, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
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 that's a strategy that I have, and I think it's great to acknowledge that, there's a lot of other strategies on how to create notes and what kind of borrower you want to find and that type of thing. But, for me personally, I hear a lot of people talking about, you know, they have a high default rate, and they're fine with that, and that's how they do it. And it's not really that's not the strategy that I want to follow suit. So I think it's great for people to hear all the different strategies.
yeah, that's why I'm always fascinated in talking to folks like you because I talk to people kind of every day that are creating notes, and I don't think I found two people that have like exactly the same
Yeah,
strategy. It's kind of all over the map as far as how people go about it. So it's kind of endlessly interesting to me to hear about how people are doing that.
yeah,
So then what do you do to recapitalize? So you mentioned like part of, sometimes you create notes because of the higher interest rates. Are you just kind of holding on to those notes, or do you sell them off or hypothecate against them, or yeah?
I'm working through all the different options. The goal is, if I can hit 15%, or more return, I just would
Mm-hmm.
love to lock them in forever,
Yeah.
and and just get a ton of them. But then there's the issue of like, hey, you're gonna run out of money at some point,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I guess there's different options there. I've been exploring what options might be best for me. I think what I'd like to do is when I get to about $1 million in note value, take them and pledge that asset, to a bank to get some kind of credit facility to get a line of credit. And then that way, I can tap into the equity that I have in there
Yep.
and extend my financial runway to keep doing more of these things. In my cash on cash, because my basis goes down in the
Yeah.
existing ones, then my cash on cash return, gets into the 30% range.
Yeah, it can go
And
way up when you
yeah,
do that. Yeah, I think that
yeah,
the trick is having really high quality paper if you want to borrow from a bank.
yeah,
Yeah, like on a lot of the existing loans that I'll buy, which are a little hairier often, I can't borrow from a bank against those. I can do it from private investors, like a lot of times through their self-directed IRA, things like that. But they have higher expectations. So I've got a higher cost of capital when I do that. So that only fits certain notes. But yeah, if you have the high quality stuff and you have a relationship with the bank and can do that, that's like super powerful.
Yeah, so that's kind of the idea where I think through a bank I could get a lower interest rate.
Mm-hmm.
And also I like the idea of a line of credit because as my cash is coming in, I can keep paying down that line of credit to minimize my
Yeah.
effective interest rate that I'm paying.
Mm-hmm.
And but then of course I'll be, drawing money back out of it to go ahead and, buy the next property and or use it to buy a flip or whatever it happens to be, however I need to use that capital. But while the capital is not being used, I'm continuing to, as I have money coming in, I'm continuing to pay that line of credit down so I can minimize my effective interest rate that I'm paying. Or if I find an
Uh-huh.
individual to give me some money with that as with a note as collateral, then I don't know what kind of rate somebody would be expecting to get. Would probably be like 8 to 10% or something, I'm guessing.
Yeah,
And
that's kind of typical.
yeah,
Um, if you go to conferences and talk to people, they'll tell you they're getting like six, but I've never found that those people anywhere. Like,
right. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, but probably 8 to 10 is like the more reasonable
Yeah. So if I,
expectations.
and if I was getting 9%, I'd still do really, really well, so I might have to go down that road if I can't find a bank,
Mm-hmm.
but I think the ideal scenario is that I find a bank, establish a credit facility, that has a rate probably closer to 7.
Yeah.
And I have the ability to keep paying it down. So every time money comes in, I'm just socking it away against that, and that way I'm lowering what my actual interest payments are.
Yeah, the more you can lower your cost of capital, like it just has such an impact
Yeah.
overall. I'm sure you've played around with spreadsheets and all that.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, as well. So one thing I guess I'll go like backwards on this. So prior to getting into real estate 4 years ago, like what were you doing before that, or what led you into it?
Well, I've been in real estate for a long time, and I was and still am a realtor and have a real estate team.
Uh-huh.
And so the team this year will probably help about 500 buyers and sellers.
Oh wow.
And so it's a great team. We kind of sat around like 350 to 400 deals for a while. This year we're last year we finished at about I think 420, and then this year we're looking to hit 500. And
Mm-hmm.
so we're on pace for that right now, which is great. So, I've been in real estate for a while. I snoozed on the investing part of it, which is really where, I wish I would have started. But,
Yeah.
when I got into it, I, had a really good organization that had, a marketing team, our operations team, a sales team, a call center. And so really when I looked at it, to do a decent amount of volume in the investing space, I already had all the resources in place. I just needed to look at them as shared resources,
Mm-hmm.
so the operations team, sales team, and so on. The call center. So I basically just started generating cash offer leads. So they go to the call center, and the call center sets the appointment for an acquisitions agent instead of a realtor. The
Uh-huh.
acquisitions person goes out and makes cash offers, gets them under contract. And a really good friend of mine was interested in getting into real estate. So at the time I wanted to get into the investing space. So I asked her if she wanted to jump in with me and build it together. And so she was interested. And so she came along and so really to build up to that, it really took like two additional people that I was already working with. It took the
Uh-huh.
acquisitions person and then my friend that came on board. And so I had a lot of really good infrastructure and understanding
That's
of,
kind of cool. It's a lot easier than building everything from scratch. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Out of curiosity, what kind of CRM do you use to manage all of that?
Yeah,
I
we,
ask
we
because I'm looking at different tools lately.
sure. Yeah, we like. I'll tell you the ones that we've liked a lot have been Zoho, which is not a real estate related CRM, but you can
Yeah.
really build it. You can build it any way you want to, and it's great. And so you can build something really big on Zoho. We're currently using Follow Up Boss, and the team likes Follow Up Boss a lot.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny
And
you say it because I've been building out all the Call the Underwriter back end on Zoho
oh yeah,
from
yeah,
scratch. What I
Zoho's
like
great.
about and I've got data going into the CRM right now. I'm not actually like using the CRM
Yeah,
just yet, but I'm basically taking bites of an elephant because I've got all this stuff to go build
sure.
from scratch. But I kind of like Zoho because it's got a bajillion different modules and you just sort of pay one license and
Yeah,
then you turn them all on. So they've got like their e-sign thing and their invoicing thing and, their thing for like forms to take data in. And then they have like basically three different ways you can automate stuff in the back end. Cause I'm also nerdy about trying to, automate anything that's manual. So yeah, it's a pretty fun tool.
it is. Yeah. Yeah, you can have an entire business working within that CRM. And there's a lot of CRMs like that. I think Zoho is probably the least expensive and the easiest to use.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
it's
you can
it's
go all the way up to Salesforce if you really want to, you want like
spend a
the
lot.
Ferrari of, yeah, and spend a lot.
It
Yeah.
spend a lot, it's complicated, and you have to have somebody that it's like a full-time person that fixes the problems in it for you. What's cool about
Hmm.
Zoho, so another thing about Zoho is it's an Indian company.
Okay.
And so there's a lot of workforce in India that's very familiar with Zoho that you can hire to, like, they're Zoho specialists, right? They're like certified Zoho specialists. And so, you could hire somebody out there. We had somebody for like $7 an hour build out all of Zoho for us.
I
Like all of it, like super intelligent person that could fix any technology problem that you could ever think of that specializes in Zoho. Where if you go with like Salesforce, I think, I remember talking to friends that had to pay, six figures, to get the thing up and
Oh
running the
yeah,
way that they needed
Salesforce
to.
is its own thing, but yeah, to your point, like I just hired a guy recently to build some automation in Zoho for me. Actually, I like to build a lot of that stuff myself, but I got into something, I'm like, okay, it's gonna take me way, way, way too long to figure this out. So that one I'm gonna hire out. Some of it I like building myself just so I know how it all works. So if it breaks, I can just go in and fix it.
Yeah,
And it's
right.
not too big a deal. But yeah, some of that stuff, it's not really like the highest and best use
Yeah,
of my
right.
time. But yeah, I think that guy's from India as well that did
Yeah.
that for me. So well, cool. Well, Dave, thanks so much for joining. Really appreciate you having you on and sharing how you do business.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me on, and thanks for everything that I've learned from you, and looking forward to continuing to work with you.
All right. Well, thanks again. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks.